Hang on. There we go. Okay. Then without further ado, yes, please, you can be on camera or off camera, whatever makes you comfortable. But if you're not the speaker, please go ahead and mute. If time permits, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A. But we just want to make sure that all of our speakers have time to tell us a little bit about what they've gone through over the past months and what they're excited about coming up, and things that we should know as a community, and things that we can be aware of as we make decisions and move forward. So with that, I would like to introduce a very familiar face in our area. Congresswoman Susan DelBene is here today. And we thank you for being here, Susan. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's great to be here. I hope everyone is doing well. It's been such a trying time, and but it's a beautiful day. I'm down in King County right now. It's gorgeous out, so hopefully everyone is enjoying the beautiful day. But it's been a tough year, and I know it's been a tough year in particular for the business community, our smaller businesses along the border. All the businesses that relied on tourism have had to adapt to do kind of whatever they can to keep the lights on. And now, of course, we've heard that the border is still closed into July. You know, in 2018, we had nearly 7 million trips made into Whatcom County with visitors from Canada. And about a quarter of those visitors spent about $138 million in local stores and businesses. And now, you know, crossings from Canada into Whatcom County are down 98% because of this crisis. And so I think it's important that we safely reopen the border so commerce begins, so people can move around. So, you know, we have folks in Point Roberts who are just trying to go to a doctor's appointment back on the mainland. It has been a very trying time, and not a lot of transparency, which is really one of my biggest asks that I've asked to Canadian officials and to our federal government, because, you know, we found out we had to wait until almost the deadlines hit before we know what the decision is going to be made in terms of whether the border is going to reopen again or for how long. And people need to understand, I think we'd all want to know what the metrics are that folks might look at so we can help try to get those metrics moving in the right direction. We know case counts are declining, vaccinations are up. And so I'm going to continue to push for that because I know it has had been such a devastating impact on businesses, and particularly in Whatcom County, obviously. It has been good news from the American Rescue Plan, the plan we passed earlier this year, in terms of getting resources out to our communities. We had a lot of programs and extended programs for small businesses, such as ongoing PPP loans, the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program, the Restaurant Revitalization Grant Program that some folks might have taken advantage of. We also have seen, you know, vaccines, more than 300 million vaccines into arms. And that's had a big difference. It made a huge difference across our communities. Clearly, we want anyone who hasn't been vaccinated to continue to get vaccinations up, because variants have been out there that are fairly virulent. And we know that people are vaccinated, they do so much better, and it has a pretty good, has a huge impact on even the variants that are coming through. So important that we continue to get vaccines out to folks, especially folks who might be harder to reach in our rural communities that many of you know well. We know jobs are coming back. The economy's created an average of 540,000 jobs per month over the last 4 months. Unemployment fell to the lowest level since the pandemic. But it's still hard because we have families who don't have childcare, folks who want to go back to work who can't or don't have the support structure like childcare to be able to do that. We've got a lot of work to put all of that back in place to help families and to help our small businesses, where, you know, we're already focused in Congress on kind of two big pieces that you've heard about, the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan. The Jobs Plan has been focused on infrastructure, and really broad infrastructure, roads and bridges. For example, in Washington, there are 416 bridges and over about 5,500 miles of highway that are in poor condition. I'm sure some of you can all think of your favorite one that needs some help. We have 54% of folks live in areas where there's only one internet provider. And we know in East Whatcom County, there's places where you can't get any broadband access. So we know that, and we have places where it's just too expensive for folks to have access, or they have some access, but not enough to do what we're doing right now, which is to be able to do video conferencing. So when we talk about infrastructure, it's roads, it's bridges, it's broadband, it's housing. We know that this has been such a challenging time for families from a housing perspective. Over 230,000 households pay more than half their monthly income in rent. So we had a housing crisis in our state before the pandemic. We still have one, and I know housing prices have been rising. I've been working in Congress on something called the Affordable Housing Tax Credit to help the creation and development of more affordable housing, and with particular focus on getting housing in rural and underserved communities, because it's not just urban communities are struggling with affordable housing. And then just kind of one last point quickly. Last year, literally, I think the last bill that President Trump signed before he left office was the National Landslide Preparedness Act, my legislation to make sure we're doing a better job doing the work to understand landslide risks throughout our community. All of you know the 2014 Oso landslide was just an incredibly terrible tragedy and took 43 lives in our community. But landslides kill 20 to 50 people a year. They cause billions of dollars in damage. We saw another one in Haines, Alaska at the end of last year, another reminder. So the U.S. Geological Survey, as a result of our legislation, now will have a focus on landslides and mapping so we can understand the risks areas in our community and help do work to safeguard against the risk to our communities and make sure a natural disaster in our region doesn't become a national tragedy. So there'll be more work there as they work to implement the program. But I'm happy to take questions later. I know there's a lot of folks who want to share, so let me stop there. And thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's more than a mouthful, but we're really grateful for you and for what you're doing on behalf of our district. And thanks for being here today. Our next up is our Forest Service. Our friends of the Forest Service have been doing an incredible job this past year. I know that we've been appreciating the videos and the updates and all the work that you guys do. So I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Brian Johnston. Brian, the floor is yours. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Nice to see everybody. My name is Brian Johnston. I'm working on the Mount Baker district of the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. I think the biggest thing I want to report out on today is transition on our district. I've been helping the forest for the past 4 months. Some of you may have worked with Erin Uloth in the past, who was the district ranger. She has accepted another position in California. And just today, a new acting ranger began his tour. His name is Ted. His name's Louis Neff, but he goes by Ted. So he's up at Cedro Woolley today, helping with our district orientation with our new employees, getting some training done there. So he'll be working with you for the next 4 months while we fill the position permanently. With that, I want to acknowledge that we have been in a lot of transition and we recognize that has impacts on our communities. So it's important to us that you know who to reach out to on the Baker District and anywhere else on the National Forest. So if people have questions about that, please let me know. So like all of us, this has been a pretty weird year. I'll demonstrate how weird. I'm in New Hampshire right now. This virtual platform has really changed our work environment. And working for the Forest Service is should be a very field-based activity. So last year at this time, we're all trying to navigate how do our trail crews get in a truck together to go work in the woods? How does our visitor center operations manage with closed doors and try to shift to a more virtual offering? It's really good to feel us crawling out of this experience together. As I mentioned, Ted is welcoming our crews at Cedro Woolley today. First time, we're not fully back in. We're sort of, we're 25% capacity in the office. People are showing up. We have plans to incrementally open our services at Glacier and Heather Meadows this summer. A little asterisk on the last one, depending on the status of the 542 road, but I saw we had somebody from Washington DOT on here, so I won't steal that thunder. So yeah, we're trying to figure out the world like everyone else. We are very eager to serve the public as we know it, being out there on the ground, talking with people, opening our visitor centers, fielding calls of, with open lines. That's what we're striving toward. In terms of the Baker Valley area, as we all know, we saw a lot of big spike in use last year. We kind of expect that trend to continue. It's already out there, right? Our campgrounds were full this past weekend. Parking has been an increasing issue that's spilling out into our quieter areas, which is a bummer. So we have our traditionally very popular areas where tourists like to be, and all of you probably like to go when it's quiet. But what we're seeing now is this displacement factors playing out, where it's so busy that the places that you could always depend on to go to are now becoming busy as well. That's just a fact of we just have to figure out how to deal with that moving forward. Additionally, we recognize that our road access to a lot of these sites leaves plenty to be desired. Our road maintenance budgets have gone down over the years and has precluded us from doing as much annual maintenance as we'd like. That being said, we do currently have active and open contracts out on our district, grading and maintaining our roads, trying to provide good access to these areas. Just a couple of updates on that. The 39 road going up to Heliotrope Ridge is now open and accessible by vehicle. That's one of the classic popular and rough roads. If you've been following our projects, the Dead Horse Road Relocation Project may sound familiar to you. That's a project that's ongoing that we're proposing to relocate a section of the 37 road away from the river. That has been objected by several people, so we're currently in process of reviewing those objections and finding a path forward for that project. But that's been an ongoing project in your backyard for a while, so if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, that's about what I have. Again, the big takeaway is, for me, is we recognize we've been pretty inconsistent in our leadership on the district, and that remains dynamic. So if you feel like you're confused or wondering who you should be reaching out to connect with us, I would be a good person to start with to point you in the right direction. It's nice to see you all, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for that update. And that reminds me too, if speakers, if you could just put your contact info into the chat box, if it's good for people to reach out to you. Otherwise, both Sonia and I in the visitor center do a lot of, we sort of feel like the telephone operators of days gone by, where information comes to us and we don't always know the answer, but we try to connect you with people who do know the answer. So thanks Brian for your words today, and for that reminder too, that we can all stay connected. All right, next on our list is Mount Baker ski area. Mike has generously and Amy are generously both here. I never get to see you guys with your goggles off. Thank you so much for being here. I will turn the floor over to you guys for an update.
All right. Thank you for inviting us to talk. Our name says, I think, 5 MACT. This is the computer that my son has used for Zoom school all year, and I haven't used it for a Zoom meeting yet. So we're actually the Trowbridges. I'm Amy Trowbridge. I'm the marketing director at Mount Baker, and this is my husband, Mike, and he's the general manager. Just before we dive into stuff, I wanted to give people a quick background on the ski area. We have about 500 seasonal employees now, and then about 50 full-time year-round employees. And we're a ski area, but we're essentially 5 businesses in one. We don't just sell lift tickets and season passes now. We also run 3 day lodges with food service facilities, and we also have instruction and rental and retail. And then we also build and maintain all of our own utilities. So we have a lot going on, and that has translated also in the year of COVID to figuring out a lot of different prongs to the problem here. So
yep. A little review on last season. It was a good season in general. We had about 704 inches of snow total. Our average is around 650. We operated for 162 days last season, which is our average in there is about 135. So it was a good long season with good snowfall for us. Financially, it was a good year, but we also had some pretty significant expenses because of all the adjustments that we had to make due to COVID. We were pretty fortunate that we didn't have a single day where we did have to close or restrict access to the ski area because of COVID. We didn't have to have any reservations for lift tickets or mountain access, which was different. We were fortunate compared to most of the other ski areas in the rest of the state. Because of that, our limiting factor really was our national maximum capacity was our parking lots. Those are our limiting factors in terms of the number of the people that we can fit in. And we consistently on the weekends would approach capacity in the parking lots, get very close to, but very rarely were we over capacity in the. We did limit the number of season passes sold. We had an initial sale of season passes, then we limited, then we stopped selling them, and then we reopened season pass sales, and we sold out to our limit in a very short amount of time there. Some of our challenges this past season, for good reason, state mandated policy reduced our overall lift capacity. So we were essentially running our 4 place chairs as an average of 2 place chairs because of social distancing guidelines there. Also, we have pretty significantly reduced lodge and food service capacity and operated our food service at a pretty good loss this year because of needing to have many more staff even than we normally would have, just increased expenses there and all of that. Parking lot issues were one of our biggest challenges this year, both with our customers and then lots and lots of other recreationalists who weren't Mount Baker paying customers who were getting out, enjoying the backcountry, and then in turn using our lots that we have through the Forest Service that we maintain. And so parking was definitely one of our challenges this year. Also staffing and hiring, just bringing on additional people. We had a strict COVID policy this year on our end, and including electronic check-in and reporting, which I think the policies were pretty effective. To our knowledge, we didn't have any staff to staff or customer to staff transmissions this winter, and I think we were successful with how we did that.
yeah, our entire crew spent months and months and months planning through the summer for every eventuality. There was so much uncertainty about would we be able to open, what our capacity restrictions would be, everything. And so we spent a ton of time planning, and then when we got to the season, we knew that it would be really important to communicate effectively to all of the customers what our policies were on a day-to-day basis, what expectations were. One challenge for us is that, the different ski areas in the Northwest had some different policies, especially regarding reservations. And we had quite a few customers who from Seattle or, you know, other places that would go to Crystal or go to Stevens and then come to Mount Baker and have kind of a different thing going on. We were really strict on mask policy and all of that. And again, we weren't sure what would happen on a day-to-day basis. And so we totally revamped our website, our Snow Report. That's now where, you know, most people get their information. And we tried to have as much information on there as we could, as clearly as we could, communicate all the different departments, what would be open that day, what reservation situation would be. And then of course, a ton of signage all over the ski area and in the parking lots of, you know, what was expected. And of course, then also hiring more people to communicate, hosts, we call them hosts, to communicate with people in lift lines, you know, work on social distancing and mask wearing and all of that. And there was some confusion, I think, with being an outdoor area, that there was some confusion on what was actually required for mask wearing and social distancing and all that. So everybody had to work hard through the season to get that across to customers, and it appeared to be really effective. We had really great compliance, and people were happy about it. So generally, throughout the season and also after the season, we got continual feedback from customers about how appreciative they were of our efforts to get open, to stay open, and to create what they felt was, you know, a safe environment for them. So many people said that it was just so great for their mental health to get outside, to get exercise, and also to feel part of a community. You know, people, you weren't, you know, standing right next to each other, riding the chairlift with strangers or stuff like that. But, you know, everybody could look around and see people having fun, enjoying themselves. And it was, I think, really great for people's mental health. I know on my part, it was so awesome to ride the chair and just see people having fun. And it felt a little bit, I had many people say, you know, this was the most normal that they felt in the year of, in the, you know, the past years. That was really nice to hear from people.
Yep. I think looking towards the future for this summer, working on a number of infrastructure projects, including a white salmon water tower replacement. Our fingers are crossed for a much more normal season next year, whatever that looks like going forward. We're really hoping that we have another good snow season. Snow is the most important factor to us from a business perspective. You know, looking at challenges, a big challenge for us in the future is going to be staffing and employee housing. Part of that dovetails into how our seasonal employees rely on the long-term rentals in Glacier, and how the number of long-term rentals are shrinking as people are moving, understandably, to more of an Airbnb VRBO model. And then also what's happening with the trailer park in Glacier. So it's something that we're definitely paying attention to. For a number of years, we've run shuttle vans out of Bellingham and out of the East County. I think we're up to 15 or 16 shuttle vans for getting our employees to the mountain. So working on those sorts of active measures. And then looking forward, just continuing to find the balance between sales and customer experience on the mountain. So thanks again for having us here. And it's a little funky with the one-way communication, but if anybody has any questions, just SNOW, S-N-O-W, at mountbaker.us is the best way to get a hold of us. And then they can redirect the questions to whoever is best to be able to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I mean, all year, I mean, all winter long, you guys really keep this whole place alive. And you know, what people don't realize is that you're doing incredible work to keep us all going in the summer, in the spring, in the fall, and the winter too. So we're really grateful for our ski area and for you guys. And thanks so much for being here today. As we move on to our next speaker, we're going to hear from Ted from Whatcom County Parks. This is the time of year, Ted, where we send, feels like everybody who wants to go to Artist Point, we just redirect them to Silver Lake. So I don't know how parking and everything's holding up over there, but thanks for being here, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of themes along with the ski area and the Forest Service. You know, parking is kind of the hot topic these days. Um, yeah, as far as the the last year in operating Silver Lake under all of the changing circumstances, Whatcom County Parks had a really different experience, even when there were federal land closures and state land closures. Whatcom County Parks remained open, and so we were kind of like the only outdoor place where people, I know everybody was kind of just going out where they could and where they wanted to, but we had a lot of good feedback from folks that were really grateful just to have an open air space where they could go and clear their head a little bit and have some sense of normalcy. And that was back in the spring. And now we had a summer last summer where we were really short staffed. There was a lot of budget uncertainty and a lot of staffing uncertainty. So we were operating on a pretty skeleton crew last year, but we managed to just keep the basic services operating. I mean, with operating a campground, you have people coming and for the most part, they're self-contained, but our big ones are bathrooms, right? So we want to provide those clean restrooms for park visitors. We also have our overnight rentals like the cabins. And so we want to make sure that we're having good cleaning protocols, and we were really monitoring health department guidance and employee safety as well, because when we had such a small staff we were working with, we were really trying to keep ourselves safe during all of that. And so, really just cleaning and maintenance really took the forefront. And, last summer, I was really impressed with the public feedback. I think a lot of people were just so, they knew that things weren't returning to normal, but they could come out and come camping and have a little bit of an escape. And so it was really rewarding to be a part of that. And then as we carried forward into the fall, it was really kind of like business as usual. The weather turned and most folks started turning towards their winter sports and winter outings. So we had a chance to get caught up on a lot of projects. You may have noticed some changes in the park in terms of infrastructure upgrades. With this increased visitorship and the amount of people that are coming out and using public lands, I looked at our attendance, and in July of 2010, so about 10 years ago, we had 15,000 people visit the park in July. And then last year, even during the pandemic, we had 60,000. So I mean, that's 4 times the visitorship in 10 years. It's pretty significant, and the park hasn't gotten any bigger in that time. We haven't added anything different. So what we're doing is really focusing on improving what's already here. And we've done campground projects where we're improving electrical and power lines, widening the roads a bit. We had, the campground was originally built back in the 60s. And so a lot of those trees had grown up kind of in the middle of the road. So the roads were really rutted out, and we had a lot of scraping issues with people on tight turns and stuff. So we got the roads a little wider, got some new power and water lines laid. And we're going to continue on that trend, but kind of custom fit it to each particular region of the park. One of our big motivators in doing these infrastructure improvements is to do our best to maintain the character of the park. And we're not trying to, completely overhaul it and modernize it and make it so that people don't even recognize it anymore. We really want it to feel like we're improving on what's already just a beautifully built park. And so if we can just improve on that with the good footprint that's already there, that's really our goal. So continuing with that, we've completed the first of several new restroom buildings. We're trying to offer running water bathrooms and showers, so they're a little more accessible to campers. Because we have always operated with just one central shower building, so we're kind of trying to put a bathroom building that's closer to the campsites and kind of keep everybody in their zone a little bit. Also, our cabins, we have been just doing slight renovations on the interiors of them, removing some of the old rot, and just getting a little tired, a little shabby in some of the spots, and we're kind of just trying to brighten them up a bit on the insides. make them a little more hygienic, easier to clean, easier to maintain. Because with that visitorship, what we're seeing is a lot more folks coming just for a 1 or 2 night stay throughout the week. Whereas 10 years ago, we might have been weekend busy, but now it's 7 days a week. We got people staying overnight. So kind of tailoring our operation to that. So those, as far as infrastructure projects, that's kind of been the focus over the winter months. And now as we're gearing up to summer, we've got good staffing. We're kind of back to a normal operating capacity. But yeah, we're definitely seeing huge increases in usership, visitorship. I'm seeing a lot more new toys, new RVs, new kayaks that people have bought over the winter and the last year. So they're definitely trying to get out and use that stuff. And so we're just staying on top of it, maintaining the parks, and trying to just keep focused on those routine services that people really rely on when they come out to use a public park. There's only other one thing that I wanted to kind of bring attention to as far as things you may see or out in Silver Lake Park specifically. Across the road from the main park entrance is the Black Mountain Forestry Center. And it's the historic Gurdrum home. It's the original homestead of Imbert Gurdrum, who built Silver Lake Park as a resort back in the 1900s. So it's a historic home, but it's always housed a forestry museum for the last 25 years or so. Y'all may or may not know Phil and Joanne Cloward. Phil passed away late in 2020, and he was just a hugely influential partner of Silver Lake Park. I mean, he and Joanne operated the Forestry Center every summer. He was a fixture, and he was just a huge resource of knowledge and inspiration for operating that place. So yeah, it definitely was, it's sad news. But before he passed away, Phil was working to transfer the Black Mountain Forestry Center to the city of Darrington down in Skagit County. And so that is still moving forward. I'm in communication with some other folks, and so you may see some different changes in the park as far as that area goes. We're going to be kind of phasing out some of the forestry and logging exhibits as the equipment goes away and goes down to Darrington. And then that site will still be maintained as just a heritage home with, you know, some self-guided interpretive exhibits and museum features and things like that. So something to keep a lookout for. But then also, yeah, just kind of moving forward, it's just business as usual, you know, renting paddle boats, renting campsites, and keeping the people happy. So yeah, I always welcome input from folks. And if there is any sort of, you know, something you'd like to see out in your Whatcom County parks, it's always good to reach out to your parks department leaders or elected officials. That input really helps drive a lot of our work and a lot of these infrastructure improvements. So I'm always kind of leaning on my peers in the community to really voice your opinion and help us define some of those projects and steer them in a good direction. So thanks for listening to me. And yeah, you know, feel free to contact me here at Silver Lake Park if you have any other questions.
Thanks so much, Ted. I really appreciate that. You know, I've had a couple opportunities to spend some time at Silver Lake Park, and I really feel like that campground upgrade really is an improvement. And we had some visitors here. Where were they from? They were from Oregon, and they just thought that they had stayed in their RV in the Maple Creek campground, and they just could not get over how beautiful it was and how easy it was to get in and out. And I know there were some growing pains as that project took place, and there were some folks who were sorry to see some trees go. But
Oh, yeah.
If you'll just leave the Cedar campground alone so my friend can hang her hammock, I think we'll have found a happy medium.
Yep.
And
sounds good. Yeah, like I said, we're doing what we can to retain the character. We don't want to change anything too much.
Totally. Thank you so much. So our final speaker
Thank you.
of the afternoon, we've got two of you, and I cannot say enough to folks who work for Washington State Department of Transportation, especially in the communications department, the difference that you folks make in our lives here in the information sharing world. Just being able to tell somebody, you know, why the road is covered in gravel, or who to call, or when to expect things to happen. Jordan and RB, I'm so glad that you guys could be here today. Really grateful for the work that you do. And I'll let you guys have an opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Rebecca. I guess we're going to be the typical state folks, and we came with a PowerPoint. So I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. You're on mute, so I can't hear what you're saying.
I said, I'll change the host to you, but the rookie move we did before was change the host, and then when they left, the whole meeting turned off. So just give it back when you're done.
Sounds good. Okay, so we'll try that. Can you see? It should say SR 542 Mount Baker Highway. Can you see
There it
that?
goes.
Perfect. So I am RB McKeon and my colleague is Jordan Longacre, and we're going to tag teams. So if you think about the Department of Transportation and how we work, there's a construction side and then there's a maintenance, traffic, and operations side. So I like to think of construction as planned work, and then Jordan deals with sort of that day-to-day or emergency work. So I'll start with some future projects. And when I say planned work, you'll notice this first project, which is SR 542, the Glacier Creek Bridge Replacement Project out at milepost 33, so kind of up closer to you all. This project is in early conceptualization phases. It's not fully funded and it's not on the calendar until 2025. But as we think about SR 542, we think of it in its totality. So sort of where you are all the way out, through Bellingham as, an access road to get to all of the great areas that people like TED and the ski resort and all of that we're talking about earlier. So our next project out on 542 is the Snoqualmie Creek to Bellingham Bay Fish Passage project. So WSDOT has been working on fish barrier correction for nearly 3 decades. So it's basically making sure that fish can navigate through passages where roads have been constructed. And this project would remove the existing 6x6 foot box culvert at milepost 3 and replace it with a fish passable structure. So this project is in design phase and it's scheduled into 2023. It will require a detour, which I know is something that usually makes Rebecca's phone ring. And many of you, certainly if you're an elected official on this call, and we try to do our best to communicate and minimize those types of impacts. The next project that I'll highlight is the Northwest Region Highway Maintenance. So that is, it touches on preservation, which Jordan will go into in just a minute, but basically it's going out, assessing the road, and then doing some crack seal repair. So if you see those black squigglies, or some people call them snakes on the road, that's crack seal repair. And that is on SR 542 between milepost 30 and 46. And it's included in scheduled work that is planned for next summer. So it's weather dependent. I will say before I turn it over to Jordan, the thing about fish passages and also about crack seal repair, we're constrained when we can do that work. So sometimes that's not always ideal because it aligns with people's busy seasons, or, folks trying to take advantage of that nice weather. We are too, and we can only be in the water when the fish aren't in the water. So we have what's called a fish window, and that's usually between like the 4th of July and Labor Day. So if you think about the best of the Pacific Northwest, our weather is the best of the best then. And the same is true in a lot of instances for crack seal repair. Just, the products that we use don't really react well with the rain that we're famous for. So sometimes that means that we're out there again at inconvenient times, but always happy to, try to mitigate that. And Sometimes we'll do a full closure instead of a long-term closure because we can condense that work into, 96 hours or 60 hours by closing the road completely and offering a detour as opposed to keeping it open for longer. So those are the construction projects on our radar. And I know you all really want to hear about Artist Point. So I'll turn it over to Jordan and he will talk about WSDOT preservation.
Thanks, RB. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jordan Longacre, and I'm the Communications Supervisor for Traffic Maintenance and Operations. And as RB mentioned, we kind of have two branches of WSDOT. One is the maintenance side, and that handles those shorter term repairs. And then we also have that construction side, which is more of a preservation work that extends the overall life of infrastructure. So just to kind of break down that preservation work that we're talking about, we do have pavement throughout the state that's in need of repair and replacement right now. There's about 3,600 lane miles of pavement that are due for preservation. There's 4,700 lane miles that are way past due. There's 1,400 lane miles in poor conditions. And currently we're paving 750 lane miles per year. This doesn't take into account all the other types of preservation that we have as well, which includes our bridges, our ferries, our rail systems, and many other areas within the state that we lend support to for transportation. So given that current backlog, it would cost about $1.8 billion each year to meet all of our maintenance and preservation needs. And right now our funding gap is $925 million per year. So you can see we have a lot of work ahead of us, but funding is certainly a bit tight, as we all are experiencing in different realms of all these different industries here represented today. But for us, it's something that people notice immediately when there are grooves in the pavement and rocky and bumpy roads. But this is what we're working toward, is trying to preserve these things, because this maintenance and preservation isn't really about just building new things. It's about taking care of what we have for generations for Washingtons to come. And these rough pavements, we acknowledge they really do lead to greater wear and tear on vehicles. They can be a safety issue, and they can cause all sorts of damage. So we certainly want to make sure that we're taking care of these things, because we know that Washington's economy really depends on well-functioning transportation systems, connecting people with their jobs and their recreations and the things that they're trying to get to throughout the state. So on the topic of recreation, as RB mentioned, I want to talk about State Route 542, the road to Artist Point. I know this is really a key road and a highlight for a lot of folks to try and get up there and catch those awesome views. As you know, late last year in October, we had a crumbling wall right along State Route 542 that's at about milepost 55.6. If you look down in the center picture of this slide, you'll see that wall. This was built in 1933, and so all the hillside behind that wall has started to erode, which caused that wall to collapse, posing a safety hazard to travelers along the roadway. So we did close State Route 542 just a little bit ahead of schedule, about a month and a half ahead of schedule, to protect people and be able to take care of that wall. We are looking now at making some temporary repairs to complete it this summer. And as you can see on the picture there on the far right, this is what it looks like today. There's a lot of snow up there. And we are still trying to evaluate what does it look like behind the tarps that we did put up there, and what's it going to take to repair that wall. It is going to take additional funding, somewhere in the upwards of $1 million or more, to actually make the proper kind of repair to this wall. But in the intermediate time, we have a plan in place, and we have funding available from an emergency management fund that will provide what we need to be able to make a temporary repair to make the road safe for travelers to travel on and for people to get up to Artist Point. But one of the things that comes along with that is that because we can't do the full repair, the highway at this point is going to remain somewhat narrow. So we are really encouraging folks who are driving campers or RVs to consider that as they want to make their way up there. We are recommending that people with vehicles that are that size do not actually travel up to Artist Point. We're hoping that they will park instead down at the Terminal Lake parking lot. Because the turn there is just going to be too tight, and it's going to be a challenge for folks to get up. We want to open this road. Our goal is to open this road to get back to Artist Point, but it's going to take a little bit of time before we can get there. As you can see on the picture on the far left there, we've got a significant amount of snowpack. Right now, our crews have been up there. They said that they've seen up to 15 feet of snow on parts of the road that lead up to Artist Point. So we do have some time to wait for that to melt out enough to where our road crews can get there and be able to safely clear it. Our goal here at WSDOT, of course, is all about safety. We want to keep our travelers safe. We want to get people to their destinations and do it safely. We want to keep our maintenance and road crews safe as well. So we're doing everything we can right now to make sure that that is our primary focus. But it is going to take time, and we don't have a date set right now for when this portion of the road will reopen. We did get a lot of the clearing done up until that Terminal Lake parking lot. I know we're working with the Forest Service right now to be able to move that gate, providing a little bit better access and closer access for people interested in getting up to Artist Point. So that is where we are at today. And that's kind of just one example of the preservation projects that we are focused on trying to do and trying to complete. But as I mentioned in the slide previously, we've got a lot of these kinds of projects around the state. So we're certainly trying to get to them as we can. And if you have any questions, like we said, RB manages the construction communications for those longer term preservation projects. And then I'm managing the communications for traffic maintenance and operations. So our contact information is there on the screen. We can also pop it in the chat for you if you have any additional questions. And we're happy to take any questions that you may have now. Thanks for the time.
Thanks both of you. Yeah, none of us would be here if it wasn't for our 58-mile Main Street. It's really important, and it's been really quiet construction wise for the most part, at least up through Maple Falls. Just appreciate you guys and what you do and keeping us informed. And your Flickr account is really awesome. I don't know if there are folks on this call who are unaware that WSDOT's got a Flickr account, but we went ahead and just printed the entire photo documents of that hairpin turn, and it's been really, really helpful to just point at and be like, yeah, that wall fell down, and it makes it easier for people to understand when we go, hey, see that little bit of roof, that's the restroom at Artist Point, and it's not even showing that. So that's really, really helpful to us. So thank you very much for being a part of that and for being a part of our conversation today. So it looks like we've got a little bit of time if we're going to make this an hour long. I'd be respectful of anyone who did need to get back to other things, but I would also be willing to open it up for a question or two if you wanted to raise your hand, or I'm not sure I can see every single person on my screen, which is amazing. But I could just wait a few minutes and you guys could ask a question if you had one. All right, we've got a quiet bunch. So I'm going to take it that this very first really, really, really gorgeous day of summer is beckoning to all of us. Thanks again to everyone, to Congresswoman DelBene and to Brian and Mike and Amy. Thanks to you guys. Thanks Ted for being here, and Jordan and RB. I really appreciate your time and all of your attention. I thank you guys for really caring about our Mount Baker region. I'm super stoked to have the position I do. I guess I could give just a really brief, what have we been doing in the visitor center over this crazy last year? So we closed our doors in late March, and Sonia and I went home. We took our computers with us and forwarded the phone to my cell phone so we could still, take care of some phone calls and emails and be connected with folks. We may have snuck up here for a sneaky fishing license or two. But we were running in that capacity until late July, when our board president built us this really cool barrier, we called it, that allowed us to come back to work and hand things through the door to visitors and answer questions that way. And there were a lot of them, but not like we're used to seeing. So at the end of July, we were able to do that, and we were running a little bit of a reduced schedule. In March, Sonia and I thought, I think it's time to come back full time, because we're going to want to be back here full time at some point, and it might behoove us to get a little bit of practice and remember our stories and our directions and where stuff's at and how the seasons work before we have hundreds of visitors. So we came back, and you know, this last May, we had more visitors this last May than we did May of 2019. So you know, outside is still there. We were all told to stay home, and then at one point they said we could go outside. Well, outside is what we do best out here. So let's just keep in mind to be gracious to those who aren't used to having the resources that we have. I know that, you know, there's been a lot of garbage and otherwise in the woods, and I know it hurts our hearts to see our landscape treated in that way, but we got to be, I'm always grateful that folks are getting outside and are able to interact with the great people who live and work out here, and that folks are getting to smell dirt and see trees, and it's just really, really important for everyone. So with that, I will close our time today. Thank you everyone for being here. Really appreciate each and every one of you. And maybe we can do this next year in, you know, the same room and have a little punch and cookie after, and visit and do that too. So thanks, you guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks, Rebecca. This was
Thank
great.
you.
Boom.